The wind howled like a wounded animal across the frozen plains of Wyoming territory, and Benjamin Everett knew with absolute certainty that he was about to die if he did not find shelter within the next hour. The blizzard had descended upon him with such ferocious intensity that he could barely see his horse's ears, let alone the landscape ahead. Snow whipped against his face like tiny shards of glass, and his fingers had gone numb inside his leather gloves hours ago. It was December of 1878, and winter had arrived with a vengeance that even the old-timers claimed they had never witnessed before. Benjamin urged his mare, Sadie, forward through drifts that reached her chest. The animal snorted clouds of frozen breath, her sides heaving with exhaustion. He had been riding from Cheyenne toward his small ranch near the Laramie River when the storm caught him, transforming the familiar territory into an alien white wasteland. Every landmark he knew had vanished beneath the relentless snow, and the temperature had plummeted so low that ice crystals formed in his beard and mustache with each exhaled breath. Through the swirling white chaos, Benjamin caught sight of something dark against the snow. His heart lifted slightly as he recognized the skeletal outline of trees, which meant water, which meant the possibility of finding some kind of natural shelter. He guided Sadie toward the copse, hoping desperately that there might be an overhang or fallen logs that could provide protection from the murderous wind. As they pushed through the trees, Benjamin saw something that made him wonder if the cold had finally affected his mind. There was a figure in the snow, a dark shape half buried in a drift. He dismounted immediately, his legs nearly buckling beneath him as his frozen muscles protested. Stumbling forward, he reached the figure and brushed away the snow from what turned out to be a woman's face. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as death, but when he pressed his fingers to her throat, he felt the faint flutter of a pulse. "Hold on," he said through chattering teeth, though he knew she could not hear him. "Just hold on." Benjamin looked around frantically, assessing their situation. The trees provided some minimal protection from the wind, and just beyond them he spotted what appeared to be a shallow cave in a rocky outcropping. It was not much, but it was something. He gathered the unconscious woman into his arms, surprised by how light she felt, and staggered toward the cave. Returning for Sadie, he led the mare to the entrance and quickly began the desperate work of creating shelter. The cave was barely deep enough for them all, but it blocked the worst of the wind. Benjamin unsaddled Sadie and used the saddle blankets to create a barrier at the cave's entrance, anchoring them with rocks and snow. His hands moved clumsily, the cold having stolen most of his dexterity, but survival instinct drove him forward. He gathered what dry wood he could find from the protected underside of fallen branches, thanking God that he had waterproof matches in his coat pocket. Getting a fire started in the cave took longer than it should have, his frozen fingers fumbling repeatedly with the matches. When the flames finally caught and began to grow, Benjamin felt a surge of hope. He turned his attention to the woman, removing her wet outer garments and wrapping her in his own dry coat and what remained of the blankets from Sadie's pack. She was young, he could see now, probably in her early 20s, with dark hair that fell in wet tangles around her face. Her clothes, though expensive-looking beneath the travel dust and snow, were completely inadequate for the Wyoming winter. Benjamin rubbed her hands and feet, trying to restore circulation, watching for any sign of frostbite. Her fingers and toes were icy but showed no blackening, which was a mercy. As warmth gradually filled the small cave, the woman began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered and then opened to reveal eyes the color of storm clouds. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice raw and confused. "Safe," Benjamin replied, his own voice hoarse from the cold. "You are safe. I found you in the snow. What is your name?" "Katherine," she said, struggling to sit up. "Katherine Morrison. I was traveling to Laramie and the stagecoach overturned in the storm. Everyone scattered. I tried to find help, but I got lost, and then I could not walk anymore." "You are lucky to be alive," Benjamin told her. "This storm is unlike anything I have seen in 10 years of living here. We need to stay put until it passes." Catherine's eyes widened as she took in their surroundings: the small fire, the cave entrance blocked with blankets, and Benjamin's weathered face in the flickering light. "You saved my life. Thank you. I do not even know your name." "Benjamin Everett. My ranch is about 10 miles from here, or at least it was before this blizzard erased the world." Over the next hours, as the storm raged outside their small shelter, Benjamin and Katherine settled into an uneasy coexistence. He melted snow for water and shared what little food he had in his saddlebags: some dried beef and hardtack that tasted like sawdust but would keep them alive. Katherine wrapped herself tightly in the blankets, still shivering despite the fire. Benjamin fed more wood to the flames, rationing their supply carefully while hoping the storm would pass quickly. "Tell me about yourself," Katherine said after a long silence. "You have a ranch." Benjamin nodded, staring into the fire. "A small one. Cattle mostly, some horses. I came out here from Missouri after the war, wanted to build something of my own away from all the destruction back east." "Which side did you fight for?" Katherine asked quietly. "Union. 3rd Missouri Volunteer Infantry. But I try not to think about those days much anymore. The war has been over for 13 years, and I have done my best to leave it in the past where it belongs." Katherine was quiet for a moment before speaking again. "I was only a child during the war. My father kept us sheltered from the worst of it in Philadelphia. He is a banker there, quite successful. He wanted me to marry the son of his business partner, a man 20 years my senior who I could not stand. So I ran away." Benjamin looked at her with surprise. "You ran away all the way to Wyoming territory?" "I have an aunt in Laramie who offered me refuge. She married a rancher out here years ago, and when I wrote to her about my situation, she said I could come live with them. I thought I could start a new life, maybe become a teacher. I am educated and I read and write well. But then the storm came, and now I do not even know if I will ever reach Laramie." "You will," Benjamin assured her. "This storm cannot last forever. When it clears, I will take you to your aunt's ranch myself. Do you know their name?" "Henderson. Thomas and Martha Henderson. They have a ranch somewhere near the Laramie River." Benjamin felt a jolt of recognition. "I know them. Good people. Their spread is about 15 miles from mine. We help each other out during calving season." Relief washed over Katherine's face. "Truly." "Oh, what a blessing. I was so afraid I would never find them." As the night deepened and the temperature continued to drop, Benjamin kept the fire burning steadily. He and Katherine talked more, sharing stories of their lives, their hopes and fears. Benjamin found himself drawn to her intelligence and spirit. The way her eyes lit up when she spoke about books she had read or places she wanted to see. Katherine, in turn, seemed fascinated by his stories of ranch life, of breaking horses and mending fences, of the vast open spaces that could make a person feel both infinitely small and boundlessly free. "It sounds wonderful," she said wistfully. "So different from Philadelphia, where everything is crowded and noisy and everyone is always judging everyone else." "It has its own hardships," Benjamin said honestly. "The isolation can be difficult, especially in winter, and the work is endless. There are times I go to bed so tired I can barely move, only to wake up and do it all over again the next day." "But you love it," Katherine observed, seeing the way his face softened when he spoke of his land. "I do," Benjamin admitted. "It is mine." I built it with my own hands, and no one can take it away from me. Out here, a man is judged by his character and his work ethic, not by who his father was or how much money he inherited. They slept fitfully that night, taking turns keeping watch on the fire. Benjamin gave Katherine the best spot, closest to the flames and farthest from the draft at the cave entrance. He dozed against the rock wall, his rifle across his lap out of habit more than necessity. The storm showed no signs of abating, and when dawn came, it brought only a slightly lighter shade of white beyond their shelter. The second day in the cave passed slowly. Benjamin ventured out briefly to gather more firewood and check on Sadie, who had found a protected spot near a large boulder and was calmly weathering the storm with the patience of her kind. He brought back an armload of wood and reported that the drifts were now so high they would have been impossible to travel through even if the visibility had been better. "We may be here another day or two," he told Katherine. "I am sorry. I know this is not comfortable." "You saved my life," Katherine repeated, her gray eyes serious. "Discomfort is a small price to pay, and honestly I do not mind the company." As the hours passed, their conversation deepened. Katherine spoke of her mother, who had died when she was 15, and how her father had become increasingly controlling afterward, trying to arrange every aspect of her life. Benjamin talked about his childhood on a small farm in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 17, about the war and the things he had seen that still haunted his dreams sometimes. "I think we are both running from something," Katherine said thoughtfully. "You from your past, me from my future." "Maybe," Benjamin agreed. "Or maybe we are both running toward something better." On the third day, the storm finally began to break. The wind died down to a whisper, and though snow still fell, it came gently now instead of in blinding sheets. Benjamin ventured farther from the cave and was able to get his bearings based on the position of a distant ridge he recognized. They were about 12 miles from his ranch, he estimated, and perhaps 18 from the Henderson place. "We should head to my ranch first," he said when he returned to the cave. "It is closer, and we can rest there before taking you to your aunt's." Katherine agreed, and they began the slow process of breaking camp. The journey through the deep snow was arduous and took most of the day. Benjamin led Sadie, breaking trail while Katherine rode the exhausted mare. The sun emerged as they traveled, turning the snow-covered landscape into a blinding expanse of white that hurt their eyes. But the beauty of it was undeniable, the way the ice crystals sparkled like diamonds, the pristine silence broken only by the crunch of their passage. When they finally reached Benjamin's ranch as the sun was setting, Katherine gasped at the sight. It was humble but well-maintained, a sturdy cabin with a stone chimney, a barn and corral, and several outbuildings. Smoke damage on one corner of the cabin showed where a fire had been, but it had been repaired carefully. "It is wonderful," Katherine said sincerely. Benjamin felt an unexpected surge of pride. "It is not much, but it is mine. Come on, let us get you inside and warm." The cabin's interior was simple but clean. There was a main room with a fireplace, a table and chairs, a rocking chair in one corner. A doorway led to a small bedroom, and another to what appeared to be a root cellar. Benjamin quickly got a fire going in the fireplace and showed Katherine where she could find clean clothes that had belonged to his late aunt, who had visited once and left some things behind. "I will sleep in the barn," he said, wanting to make sure Katherine understood she would have privacy and safety. "You take the bedroom. Tomorrow we can make plans to get you to the Henderson place." But Katherine looked troubled. "Benjamin, I need to tell you something. When I said I ran away, I meant it. My father will be looking for me. He has connections, resources. If he finds out where I am, he will send men to bring me back. I cannot go to my aunt's place right away. It is the first place he will look. I need time to figure out what to do, how to make sure he cannot force me back to Philadelphia." Benjamin considered this, seeing the genuine fear in her eyes. "How long do you need?" "I do not know. A few weeks, a month. Just until I can write to a lawyer in Denver my aunt told me about, someone who can help me establish my independence legally. I am 22, but my father controls my inheritance from my mother. I need to find a way to access it, or at least ensure he cannot use it as leverage against me." "You can stay here," Benjamin heard himself say, surprising them both. "I can use help around the ranch anyway. You could earn your keep and it would give you time to sort things out." Katherine's eyes filled with tears. "You would do that for me, but you barely know me." "I know enough," Benjamin said simply. "You have courage or you would not have made it this far, and you need help. Out here we help each other. That is how we survive." So Katherine stayed. At first she was awkward and uncertain, having never done ranch work in her life. Benjamin taught her patiently how to milk the 2 cows, how to collect eggs from the chickens, how to churn butter and bake bread in the Dutch oven. She proved to be a quick learner, approaching each task with determination despite her initial clumsiness. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Benjamin discovered that Katherine was well-read and intelligent, with opinions on everything from politics to literature. She had a sharp wit that made him laugh, something he had not done often in the years since he had been alone on the ranch. Katherine, for her part, found herself drawn to Benjamin's quiet strength, his gentleness with the animals, the way he could fix almost anything with his hands. 2 weeks after the blizzard, Benjamin made the trip to the Henderson ranch. He found Thomas Henderson in the barn, mending tack, and told him the abbreviated version of the story. "So Katherine Morrison is your niece's friend?" Benjamin asked carefully, not wanting to reveal too much. Thomas looked confused. "Martha does not have a niece named Katherine Morrison." "Are you sure that is the name she gave you?" Benjamin felt his stomach drop. He thanked Thomas and rode back to his ranch, his mind churning. When he arrived, he found Katherine in the kitchen, rolling out dough for biscuits. She looked up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "You lied to me," he said flatly. "The Hendersons have never heard of you." Katherine's face went white. She set down the rolling pin with trembling hands. "I can explain. Please let me explain. I am listening. My aunt's name is actually Martha Henderson, but she is in Denver, not Laramie. I confused the cities when I was half frozen and terrified, but everything else I told you is true. My father is trying to force me into marriage. I did run away, and I really was on that stagecoach. I just got the location wrong." Benjamin studied her face, trying to determine if she was telling the truth. "Why should I believe you now?" "Because I have no reason to lie anymore," Katherine said desperately. "Benjamin, these past 2 weeks have been the best of my life. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is true. For the first time, I feel like I am doing something real, something that matters. I do not want to lose this. I do not want to lose you." The last words hung in the air between them. Benjamin felt something shift in his chest, an acknowledgement of feelings he had been trying to ignore. He had grown to care for Katherine deeply, more than he wanted to admit. "Write to your aunt," he said finally. "Get her address, prove to me that she exists, and no more lies. If you are going to stay here, I need to be able to trust you." Katherine nodded quickly, relief flooding her face. "I will. I promise. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you for giving me another chance." That evening, Katherine wrote a long letter to her aunt in Denver, and Benjamin rode into the nearest town the next day to post it. While he was there, he noticed a wanted poster that made his blood run cold. It showed a sketch of Katherine, along with a substantial reward for information leading to her whereabouts. The poster claimed she had been kidnapped from a stagecoach during a blizzard, and that her wealthy father was desperate to find his beloved daughter. Benjamin tore the poster down and rode back to his ranch with it burning a hole in his coat pocket. When he arrived, he found Katherine in the barn, grooming Sadie with careful strokes. She looked up as he entered, and whatever she saw in his face made her freeze. "Your father is claiming you were kidnapped," Benjamin said, showing her the poster. "He is offering $500 for information about you." Katherine's hands clenched into fists. "Of course he is. He would never admit that I left of my own free will. That would be humiliating for him." "Benjamin, I swear to you I was not kidnapped. I chose to leave. I chose to stay with you." "I know," Benjamin said quietly. "I believe you, but this complicates things. If anyone saw you at that stagecoach stop before the storm, if anyone knows you are here, they could come looking for that reward." "What should we do?" Benjamin thought for a long moment. "We keep you out of sight when I go into town. We wait for word from your aunt. And we hope that the winter weather keeps people from traveling too much." The weeks that followed were tense, but also strangely sweet. Katherine threw herself into learning everything she could about ranch life. She proved to have a natural way with animals, especially the horses. Benjamin found her in the corral one afternoon, speaking softly to a young stallion he had been trying to gentle without much success. The horse was eating an apple from her hand, calm as could be. "How did you do that?" he asked, amazed. Katherine shrugged, but she looked pleased. "I just talked to him, let him know I was not going to hurt him. Animals can sense fear and anger, but they can also sense kindness. You taught me that." "I did. You do it without realizing. The way you move around them, slow and steady. The way you speak to them like they are friends. I have just been copying you." Benjamin felt warmth spread through his chest. He climbed over the fence and stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The stallion nickered softly, and Benjamin reached out to stroke his neck. "You are a natural," he said to Katherine. "You could be a real rancher's wife someday." The words were out before he could stop them, and he felt his face heat with embarrassment. But Katherine did not pull away. Instead, she turned to look at him, her gray eyes serious and searching. "Is that what you want?" she asked quietly. "For me to be a rancher's wife. Your wife." Benjamin met her gaze, knowing that this was a moment that would define everything that came after. "I know it is too soon. I know we have only known each other a few weeks. But yes, Katherine, that is what I want. I have come to care for you more than I thought possible. You make this place feel like a home instead of just a house." Katherine's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Your kindness changed everything for me, Benjamin. When you found me in that snow, when you saved my life, you gave me more than just survival. You gave me hope. You showed me that there are good men in the world, men who help others without expecting anything in return. I have fallen in love with you, with this life, with the possibility of a future I never imagined for myself." Benjamin cupped her face in his work-roughened hands, marveling at the softness of her skin. "I love you too," he said, the words feeling both terrifying and right. "I think I have loved you since you opened your eyes in that cave and looked at me like I was some kind of hero, when really I was just doing what anyone should do." "You are a hero," Katherine insisted. "You are my hero." Their first kiss was gentle, almost hesitant, there in the corral with the winter sun shining down on them and the horse watching with mild interest. But it deepened quickly, conveying all the pent-up emotion and desire they had been carefully ignoring for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "We should do this properly," Benjamin said. "Court you the right way, though I suppose living in the same house makes that difficult." Katherine laughed. I think we are a bit past traditional courting, but I appreciate the sentiment. The letter from Catherine's aunt arrived in early February, and it confirmed everything Katherine had said. Martha Henderson, living in Denver, was indeed Catherine's aunt on her mother's side. She wrote that she had been worried sick when she heard about the stagecoach accident and had hired investigators to try to find Katherine. She urged her niece to come to Denver as soon as the weather permitted travel, and said she had already contacted the lawyer she had mentioned, who was prepared to help Katherine establish her legal independence from her father. "You should go," Benjamin said, though the words hurt to speak. "Your aunt is worried about you, and you need to get your legal affairs sorted out." "Come with me," Katherine said immediately. "The ranch can survive a week or two without you, cannot it? And I do not want to be separated from you now." So in late February, when the worst of the winter had passed and the roads were passable again, Benjamin and Katherine made the journey to Denver. They traveled by stagecoach, sitting close together, Katherine's hand clasped in Benjamin's. Denver was larger and busier than any place Benjamin had been in years, and he found himself uncomfortable with the crowds and noise. But Katherine's aunt welcomed them warmly to her elegant home on the edge of the city. Martha Henderson was a handsome woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She took one look at Benjamin and Katherine together and smiled knowingly. "Well," she said, "I can see that the stagecoach accident might have been the best thing that ever happened to you, my dear niece." Over the next week, Katherine met with the lawyer, a shrewd man named George Patterson, who had made a reputation representing women seeking independence from controlling family members. He explained that because Katherine was over 21, she had certain legal rights, but accessing her inheritance was complicated by the terms of her mother's will and her father's position as executor. "It will take time," Patterson said, "possibly several months. Your father will fight this and he has resources. But I believe we can win, especially given that you can prove you left of your own volition and that he has been spreading false information about your kidnapping." Katherine nodded, looking determined. "How long should I stay in Denver?" "You do not need to stay here," Patterson said. "I can handle the legal proceedings. I will need to depose you at some point, but that can wait. Where were you planning to live?" Katherine glanced at Benjamin. "Wyoming Territory, on a ranch near the Laramie River." Patterson nodded approvingly. "Good. Being in a different territory will make it harder for your father to harass you directly. Just keep me informed of your exact location." Before they left Denver, Benjamin did something he had been planning since Katherine first told him she loved him. He took her to a jeweler and bought her a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. It cost him most of his savings, but he did not care. That evening, in the privacy of their boarding house room, Benjamin got down on one knee. Katherine's hands flew to her mouth, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Katherine Morrison," Benjamin said, his voice rough with emotion, "I know I am just a rancher with a small spread and calloused hands. I cannot offer you the kind of life you grew up with in Philadelphia. But I can offer you my love, my loyalty, and a home where you will always be cherished. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Katherine said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him fiercely. "Yes, Benjamin Everett, I will marry you, and you are wrong about one thing. You are offering me a better life than I ever had in Philadelphia, because you are offering me freedom and love and partnership. You are offering me everything I have ever wanted." They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at a small church in Denver, with Martha Henderson and her husband as witnesses. Katherine wore a new dress that her aunt had insisted on buying, pale blue silk that made her eyes look like silver. Benjamin wore his best suit, brushed clean of trail dust, and felt like the luckiest man alive when Katherine walked down the aisle toward him. The minister, an elderly man with gentle eyes, spoke about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of facing life's challenges together. When he pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed Katherine with such tenderness that Martha Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Take care of her," Martha said to Benjamin after the ceremony. "She is more precious than you know." "I will guard her with my life," Benjamin promised, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, arriving in late March when the first signs of spring were beginning to show. The snow had melted significantly, revealing patches of brown grass, and there was a softness to the air that promised warmer days ahead. Katherine looked at the cabin with new eyes, seeing it now as truly her home. "We should expand," she said as Benjamin helped her down from the wagon. "Add another room, maybe a bigger kitchen. If we are going to build a life here, we should build it properly." Benjamin grinned. Already planning renovations, Mrs. Everett, Katherine blushed at the sound of her new name but nodded firmly. "I am. I want this place to be perfect for our family." "Our family," Benjamin repeated, liking the sound of those words. The spring and summer that followed were busy and exhausting and wonderful. Benjamin taught Katherine more about ranching, and she proved to be an able partner in every aspect of the work. They hired a carpenter from Cheyenne to help them expand the cabin, adding a second bedroom and enlarging the kitchen as Katherine had wanted. She planted a garden, growing vegetables and herbs, and even started a small flock of chickens that followed her around like she was their mother. In June, word came from George Patterson that Katherine's legal case was proceeding well. Her father had been forced to admit that Katherine had left of her own free will, and a judge had ruled that she had the right to access her inheritance. The money would not be available immediately, but Patterson was confident it would be released within a few months. "What will you do with it?" Benjamin asked as they sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun set over the mountains. Katherine leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Invested in the ranch. Buy more cattle, maybe more land if any is available. I want to build something lasting here with you, Benjamin, something we can pass on to our children." "Children," Benjamin said softly. "I like the sound of that." Katherine looked up at him, her eyes sparkling. "Then perhaps you will be pleased to know that there might be a child sooner than you think." It took Benjamin a moment to understand what she was saying, and when he did, his face lit up with joy. "You are pregnant, truly." "I think so. I have not been certain, but all the signs are there." "I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. I wanted to be sure." Benjamin pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Katherine, this is the best news I have ever received. Are you happy?" Katherine asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. "I am more than happy. I am blessed beyond measure." Their son was born in February of 1880, during another harsh Wyoming winter. But this time, instead of being caught in a blizzard, Benjamin and Katherine were safe and warm in their expanded cabin, with a midwife from town assisting with the birth. The labor was long and difficult, and Benjamin paced the main room anxiously, listening to Katherine's cries of pain and feeling helpless. But when the baby finally came, when he heard that first lusty wail, all the fear and worry melted away. The midwife cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket before placing him in Katherine's exhausted arms. "You have a son," she said with a smile. "A strong, healthy boy." Benjamin approached the bed slowly, almost reverently, looking down at his wife and child. Katherine was pale and sweaty, her hair plastered to her forehead, but she had never looked more beautiful to him. The baby had a shock of dark hair and tiny perfect fingers that curled around Benjamin's thumb when he offered it. "What should we name him?" Benjamin asked, his voice thick with emotion. Katherine considered for a moment. William, after my mother's father. He was the only member of my family who ever truly understood me, who believed women should have the freedom to choose their own paths. He died when I was young, but I have never forgotten his kindness. William Everett, Benjamin said, testing the name. It is perfect. As William grew from an infant to a toddler, the ranch prospered. Katherine's inheritance came through as Patterson had promised, and they used it wisely. They bought more cattle, expanded their operation, hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. Katherine proved to have a sharp mind for business, keeping meticulous records and finding better prices for their cattle at market. She also became involved in the small community near their ranch, helping to establish a school and occasionally teaching the children when the regular teacher was ill. The families in the area came to respect and admire Katherine, seeing her as proof that Eastern refinement and Western grit were not mutually exclusive. In the spring of 1882, Katherine gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah. She had Katherine's gray eyes and Benjamin's quiet demeanor, and from the start she showed a fascination with horses that delighted her father. By the time she was 3, Sarah could sit a horse with confidence, and Benjamin loved nothing more than riding the property with his little daughter perched in front of him on the saddle. The ranch continued to grow and thrive. By 1885, they had one of the most successful operations in the region. But despite their prosperity, Benjamin and Katherine never forgot where they had started, never forgot that blizzard that had brought them together. Every winter, when the first major snowstorm came, they would sit together by the fire and Benjamin would tell the children the story of how he had found their mother half frozen in the snow, how he had saved her life, and how that act of simple kindness had changed both of their lives forever. "Your kindness changed everything for me," Katherine would always say, squeezing Benjamin's hand. Everything. As the years passed, their love only deepened. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, celebrated good years, and persevered through difficult ones. They added a 3rd child to their family in 1887, another son they named Thomas after Katherine's uncle by marriage, who had since passed away. The ranch house expanded again to accommodate their growing family, sprawling comfortably across the land that Benjamin had first claimed as a young man seeking a new start. In 1890, when William was 10 years old and already showing signs of becoming a skilled rancher himself, Katherine received a letter that made her hands tremble. It was from her father's lawyer, informing her that her father had passed away from a sudden heart condition. The letter also stated that her father had left her a substantial portion of his estate, along with a personal letter he had written shortly before his death. Katherine opened the letter with Benjamin beside her, needing his support. Her father's handwriting was shaky but still recognizable. "My dear Katherine," the letter began, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I tried to control your life because I thought I knew what was best for you, but I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I hired investigators over the years to check on you to make sure you were well. They told me about your husband, your children, your successful ranch. They told me that you were happy, truly happy, in a way you never were under my roof. I am proud of you, daughter. I am proud of the life you have built, and I am sorry I was not part of it. I hope you have found the freedom and love I tried to deny you. Your loving father." Katherine wept when she finished reading, not for the loss of her father, because that relationship had died long ago, but for what might have been. Benjamin held her close, offering comfort without words until her tears subsided. "He knew," she said finally. "All these years he knew where I was and what I was doing, and he never tried to force me back." "Maybe he did change," Benjamin said gently. People can change, given enough time and reason. Katherine folded the letter carefully and put it away. I hope he found peace at the end, but I will not pretend our relationship was something it was not. He made his choices and I made mine. And I would make the same choice again, every single time. The additional inheritance from her father's estate allowed them to purchase even more land, expanding their ranch to nearly 2,000 acres. But more importantly, it allowed Benjamin and Katherine to establish a scholarship fund for young women who wanted education and independence, but lacked the financial means. It was Katherine's way of honoring the person she might have been, and helping others avoid the trap she had nearly fallen into. By 1895, their ranch was one of the most respected in Wyoming, which had achieved statehood in 1890. William, now 15, was already taking on significant responsibilities, managing some of the ranch operations with a maturity beyond his years. Sarah, at 13, had become an accomplished horsewoman and often helped break the young colts, much to her mother's simultaneous pride and worry. Thomas, at 8, showed signs of having inherited his mother's head for numbers and business. Benjamin, now in his late 40s, still rose before dawn every day to work the land he loved. His hair had gone gray at the temples, and his face bore the lines of a life spent outdoors, but Katherine thought he had never been more handsome. She watched him sometimes when he did not know she was looking, marveling that this good man was hers, that they had built this life together. One evening in late summer, after the children had gone to bed, Benjamin and Katherine sat on the porch they had expanded over the years. The sky was ablaze with stars, so many that it seemed impossible to count them all. Katherine leaned against Benjamin, fitting perfectly against his side as she always had. "You ever regret it?" Benjamin asked quietly. "The life you left behind in Philadelphia, the comfort and society." Katherine turned to look at him, surprised. "Never, not for a single moment." "How could I regret finding true love? How could I regret this life we have built, these children we have raised, this partnership we have forged? You saved me, Benjamin, and I do not just mean from the blizzard. You saved me from a life of hollow comfort and stifling control. You gave me freedom and purpose and love beyond measure." "You saved me too," Benjamin said, his voice rough with emotion. "I was just existing before you came into my life, going through the motions. You made me remember what it was like to feel joy, to look forward to each new day. You turned my house into a home, my land into a legacy. Your kindness changed me, Katherine, just as much as mine changed you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out, and from the barn came the soft nickering of horses settling for the night. It was peaceful and perfect, everything they had worked so hard to build. "Tell me the story again," Katherine said softly. "How you found me." Benjamin smiled, knowing exactly which story she meant. It was one they both loved, the origin of everything good in their lives. "It was the worst blizzard I had ever seen," he began, his voice taking on the cadence of a practiced storyteller. "The wind was howling like a demon, and I could barely see Sadie's ears in front of me. I knew I was in trouble, knew I might not make it home. And then I saw something dark in the snow, and I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But I went to look anyway, and there you were. Half frozen and more dead than alive," Katherine added with a smile. "But still beautiful," Benjamin said, kissing the top of her head. "Even then I thought you were beautiful, and when you opened those gray eyes and looked at me, I felt something shift inside me. I did not know it then, but that was the moment my real life began." "Mine too," Katherine whispered. "Everything before that moment was just preparation. Everything after has been living." As they sat together under the vast Wyoming sky, surrounded by the land they had tamed and the life they had built, both Benjamin and Katherine felt profound gratitude. Not just for each other, though that gratitude was immense, but for the chance circumstances and fateful decisions that had brought them together. For the blizzard that had nearly killed them, but instead had given them everything. For the kindness that had sparked between two strangers and grown into a love that had sustained them through nearly 2 decades of joys and challenges. In the years that followed, their love continued to deepen in the way that only long-married couples understand. They developed a language of gestures and glances, could finish each other's sentences, knew each other's moods and needs without words. They weathered the changes that came with the turn of the century, the slow modernization that reached even Wyoming, the coming of better roads and more reliable communication. William married in 1898, bringing home a strong-willed young woman from Cheyenne who Katherine immediately liked. They built a house on the eastern portion of the ranch, keeping the family enterprise united while allowing the young couple their independence. In 1899, William and his wife made Benjamin and Katherine grandparents for the first time with the birth of twin boys. Sarah proved more independent, declaring at 18 that she wanted to attend the new university in Laramie before settling down. Benjamin worried, but Katherine supported their daughter's ambition, seeing in Sarah the same desire for education and independence that she herself had once felt. Sarah became a teacher, eventually returning to the area to establish her own school, and married a fellow teacher when she was 25. Thomas, true to his early promise, took over much of the business side of the ranch, implementing new accounting systems and finding innovative ways to market their cattle. He remained unmarried into his 20s, devoted to the ranch and his family, though Katherine suspected he had his eye on the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Through it all, Benjamin and Katherine remained the heart of their family. They were the ones the children and grandchildren came to with problems and triumphs, the anchor that kept everyone grounded. Their love story had become legend in the community, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But for Benjamin and Katherine, it remained deeply personal and immediate, as real and vital as the day they first fell in love. In the spring of 1905, as they approached their 25th wedding anniversary, their children conspired to throw them a celebration. Nearly 100 people attended, neighbors from throughout the region, business associates from Cheyenne and Laramie, old friends and new. Tables were set up in front of the ranch house, laden with food. A small band played music for dancing. It was more social activity than Benjamin and Katherine usually enjoyed, but the love and respect shown by the community moved them deeply. When William stood to make a toast, the crowd fell silent. "My parents' story begins with a blizzard," William said, his voice carrying across the assembly. "With my father's kindness in saving a stranger's life, but it is so much more than that. It is a story of two people who found in each other not just love, but partnership. Who built something lasting together, not just this ranch, but a family, a legacy, a model of what marriage and commitment should be. They taught us by example that true love is not about grand gestures, but about showing up every day, working side by side, supporting each other through good times and bad." To Benjamin and Katherine Everett, the finest parents a child could ask for, and an inspiration to us all. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Benjamin and Katherine stood together, his arm around her waist, her head against his shoulder, both of them overwhelmed with emotion. When the noise finally died down, Katherine surprised everyone by asking to speak. "27 years ago," she began, her voice clear and strong despite her emotion. "I was lost in a blizzard, freezing to death, convinced I would never see another sunrise. And then a cowboy found me, a stranger who had every reason to save himself and leave me to my fate. But Benjamin Everett did not leave me. He sheltered me, protected me, saved my life at great risk to his own. And in the days that followed, he offered me something even more precious than survival. He offered me kindness without expectation, acceptance without judgment, and eventually, love without condition. Your kindness changed everything for me, Benjamin. It gave me life, yes, but more than that, it gave me hope. It showed me that goodness still existed in the world. And every day since, you have continued to show me that kindness, that love. You are the best man I have ever known, and I thank God for that blizzard, for the chance circumstances that brought us together. I would weather 1,000 storms to find you again. There was not a dry eye in the crowd." Benjamin pulled Katherine close and kissed her there in front of everyone, not caring about propriety or decorum, caring only about expressing the overwhelming love he felt for this remarkable woman who had taken a chance on a lonely cowboy and never looked back. The party continued late into the evening, with music and dancing and laughter echoing across the prairie. Benjamin and Katherine danced together under the stars, moving slowly to a waltz the band played, completely absorbed in each other despite being surrounded by people. "Have I told you today that I love you?" Benjamin murmured against Katherine's ear. "Only twice," Katherine teased. "I suppose a third time would not hurt." "I love you, Katherine Everett. I love you more than I have words to express. You are my heart, my home, my everything." "And you are mine," Katherine replied, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Always and forever, you are mine." As they continued to sway to the music, both of them reflected on the incredible journey they had taken together. From strangers thrown together by a blizzard to partners in every sense of the word, from a small cabin and handful of cattle to a thriving ranch and large family, from tentative first love to the deep, abiding partnership they now shared. It had not always been easy. There had been years of drought and years of plenty, times when money was tight and times of abundance, moments of worry over sick children and dangerous situations, but through it all, they had faced everything together. Benjamin thought about that young man he had been, riding through a blizzard, convinced he was about to die. If someone had told him then that he would find in that storm not death but life, not an end but a beginning, he would not have believed it. And yet here he was, decades later, surrounded by family and friends, dancing with a woman who had transformed his entire existence. Katherine thought about the terrified young woman she had been, running from a future she could not bear, nearly dying in the snow. If someone had told her then that the cowboy who saved her would become her husband, her partner, the father of her children, and the great love of her life, she would have thought it a fairy tale. And yet fairy tales sometimes came true, especially in the wild, untamed land of Wyoming where anything seemed possible. The years continued to pass, each one adding new chapters to their story. Grandchildren multiplied, and eventually great-grandchildren arrived. The ranch continued to prosper under the combined management of Benjamin, Katherine, and their children. They weathered economic downturns and celebrated boom years. They saw automobiles replace horses on the roads, though never on their ranch where they maintained their traditional ways. They saw Wyoming grow and change, becoming less wild and more settled, though the land itself remained as beautiful and challenging as ever. Benjamin and Katherine grew old together, their hair turning white, their movements becoming slower and more careful. But their love never diminished, never became routine or taken for granted. They still sat together on the porch each evening when weather permitted, still held hands like young lovers, still looked at each other with the wonder and gratitude of two people who knew exactly how lucky they were. In the winter of 1920, another blizzard struck Wyoming. It was not as severe as the legendary storm of 1878, but it was significant enough to remind everyone of the power of nature. Benjamin and Katherine, now both in their 60s, sat by the fireplace in the ranch house they had expanded so many times. Their great-grandchildren played on the floor at their feet, and outside the wind howled with familiar fury. "You remember?" Katherine asked, watching the snow swirl past the window. "Every detail," Benjamin replied. "I remember seeing you in the snow, remember thinking you were already gone. Remember the relief when I felt your pulse. Remember those 3 days in the cave, getting to know you, starting to fall in love with you, though I would not admit it even to myself. I remember opening my eyes and seeing your face," Katherine said softly. "Remember thinking you looked like an angel sent to save me. Remember feeling safe despite the danger because you were there. Remember falling in love with you so fast it frightened me. Best thing that ever happened to me, that blizzard," Benjamin said, as he had said countless times over the years. "Best thing that ever happened to us both." "Your kindness changed everything for me," Katherine said, the words as true now as they had been when she first spoke them. "Everything good in my life flows from that moment, from your choice to help a stranger, to offer shelter and protection without asking for anything in return." One of their great-grandchildren, a little girl of about 5, looked up from her toys. "Tell us the story, great-grandpa. Tell us about the blizzard." Benjamin looked at Katherine, and they shared a smile that spoke of decades of love and partnership. "Well," Benjamin began, settling more comfortably in his chair, "it was the worst blizzard I had ever seen. The wind was howling like a wounded animal, and I was afraid I was not going to make it home. But then I saw something in the snow." As Benjamin told the story once again, Katherine watched him with eyes full of love. She thought about how blessed she had been, how one terrible storm had brought her the greatest treasure of her life. She thought about the man she had married, still kind and gentle after all these years, still the hero who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. Benjamin finished the story as he always did, with finding Katherine in the snow and deciding to help her despite the danger to himself. The children listened with rapt attention, as children always did, captivated by the drama and romance of it all. "Why did you help her, great-grandpa?" the little girl asked. "Were not you scared?" "I was terrified," Benjamin admitted, "but I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Because out here we look after each other. Because leaving someone to die in the snow was not something I could live with. And also," he added with a wink at Katherine, "because she was too pretty to leave behind." Katherine laughed, the sound still as lovely to Benjamin as it had been when they first met. "You could not have known that. I was half frozen and covered in snow." "I could tell," Benjamin insisted, a familiar argument between them that had become a treasured joke. As the evening wore on and the blizzard continued outside, the family gathered closer around the fire. There were now 4 generations of Everetts in the house, all connected by the love story that had begun in a different blizzard more than 40 years earlier. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them testimony to the power of kindness, of love, of two people who had chosen each other and never wavered from that choice. Later that night, when everyone else had gone to bed and Benjamin and Katherine were alone in the bedroom they had shared for decades, they lay together in the darkness, listening to the wind howl outside their walls. "I have been thinking," Katherine said softly, "about what comes next, about the future." "What about it?" Benjamin asked, pulling her closer. "I want you to know that whatever happens, however much time we have left, I am grateful for every single day we have had together. I am grateful for that blizzard, for your kindness, for the life we built. If I could go back and change anything, I would not. Every moment, good and bad, has been worth it because I got to spend it with you." Benjamin felt emotion tighten his throat. "I feel the same way. You are my everything, Katherine. You always have been, from the moment I found you in that snow. And whatever time we have left, I want to spend every second of it with you." They held each other close as the storm raged outside. Two people who had weathered many storms together and would weather whatever came next with the same love and partnership that had sustained them for more than 4 decades. Benjamin Everett and Katherine Morrison Everett lived well into their 80s, a remarkable achievement for people of their generation. They remained active in the ranch's operations for as long as their health allowed, always partners, always working side by side. When they finally could no longer work, they spent their days on the porch they had built together, watching their descendants manage the land they had carved out of the wilderness. They passed away within months of each other, as couples who have been together for so long often do. Katherine went first, peacefully in her sleep on a warm summer night in 1932. Benjamin followed that same winter, on a day when snow was falling gently outside the window, as if the blizzard that had brought them together was calling him home. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath headstones that bore simple inscriptions. Benjamin's read, "Beloved husband, father, grandfather, and friend. His kindness changed everything." Katherine's read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. Her love transformed everything." The ranch they had built together continued to thrive for generations, passed down through William's line and then to his children and grandchildren. It became a historical landmark eventually, recognized not just for its size and success, but for the love story that had founded it. The tale of the cowboy who saved a stranger in a blizzard and married her became part of Wyoming folklore, told and retold until it was impossible to separate fact from legend. But those who had known Benjamin and Katherine knew that the legend, however embellished it became, could never fully capture the reality of their love, could never fully express the depth of commitment they had shown each other year after year, the partnership they had forged, the family they had raised, the legacy they had built, could never adequately convey how one act of kindness in a blizzard had rippled outward to affect hundreds of lives across multiple generations. In the end, what remained was this: two people had found each other in the worst of circumstances and had chosen to build something beautiful together. They had taken chance and transformed it into destiny, had taken survival and transformed it into a life worth living, had taken kindness and transformed it into love that lasted beyond death itself. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on the ranch as the 20th century progressed, still told the story of the blizzard and the cowboy and the stranger he saved. And every time the story was told, it ended the same way, with Katherine's words that had become the family motto, carved into a wooden sign that hung over the ranch house door: "Your kindness changed everything for me." Because it had. One man's simple decision to help a stranger in need had changed everything, not just for two people, but for all the lives that came after, all the children and grandchildren and descendants who owed their very existence to that moment of compassion in a Wyoming blizzard. It was a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of love, and the enduring truth that sometimes the most important thing we ever do is reach out a hand to someone who needs help. Benjamin and Katherine's story became a reminder that heroes are not always soldiers or politicians or famous figures. Sometimes they are just ordinary people who do the right thing when it matters most, who offer shelter to a stranger, who choose compassion over convenience, who build their lives on a foundation of kindness and love. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, that kindness is returned 1,000-fold, transforming not just one life but many, creating ripples that spread far beyond what we can see or imagine. The ranch still stands today, still operated by Everett descendants, still prosperous and successful. The cabin that Benjamin built has been preserved and restored, a museum now that tells the story of its founders. And on winter days when blizzards sweep across Wyoming, when the wind howls and the snow falls thick and fast, visitors to the Ranch Museum sometimes report feeling a presence, a warmth that seems to emanate from the old cabin walls. They say it feels like love, like hope, like the enduring spirit of two people who found each other in a storm and held on to each other through everything that came after. This is the story of Benjamin Everett and Katherine Morrison Everett, of a cowboy and the stranger he saved, of kindness that transformed into love, of a partnership that built not just a ranch but a legacy. It is a story that reminds us that our actions matter, that choosing compassion can change the world, and that love, true love, can weather any storm and last beyond death itself into eternity.